Good afternoon and welcome to our session this afternoon, to our webinar this afternoon, entitled Tailoring Media Literacy with AI, Overcoming Challenges of Bias and Misinterpretation. My name is Sally Reynolds from the Media and Learning Association, and I'm delighted to be joined also this afternoon with our partners in running this session, and that is Brittani Kollar from MediaWise Poynter Institute. So we decided we would run this session together as part of the UNESCO Global Media and Information Week. So we're delighted to be running this together and looking forward to a really good session this afternoon. So let me start just by a couple of very quick housekeeping points. First of all, the session is being recorded, so we will be able to make the recording available to you afterwards, and we'll also make available the presentations that our speakers are going to give this afternoon. Second little point of housekeeping, please during the session keep your microphone off, but if you can put your camera on, it's really nice to see everybody, and so please feel free to do that. We will be taking questions. We will be going into breakout sessions later on as well with each of our three speakers. So you'll have plenty of time, but you can also use the chat function in Zoom to put your questions, to make any points you'd like to make as well. We'd also like to ask you, if you can, to change your name in Zoom to indicate your full name and the institution that you come from, and the country that you're joining us from this afternoon, because it's always nice to know where people are joining us from. And to do that, you just hit the three little dots beside your name and the list of participants, and you can adjust your name there. So I hope that's going to be helpful for you this afternoon. So just before I hand over to Brittani to introduce Poynter MediaWise this afternoon, just a reminder of our session. So we will have presentations this afternoon, starting with Mariana Ochs, who's the education coordinator from EducaMidia in Brazil. Also followed then by Syed Nazakat, who is the CEO and founder of DataLEADS in India. And then Louise Hisayasu, I hope I'm not making too much of a mess of your name, Louise, forgive me, from Tactical Tech. We hope then by about 2:30, our local time in Belgium, we will be going into a panel discussion. Then we'll take some time to go into breakout rooms so you can have a more in-depth discussion with our panelists this afternoon, and then we'll come back for debrief. So that's the plan for the session this afternoon. But I'd like to hand over to Brittani to introduce herself and, of course, her organisation, MediaWise Poynter Institute. Oh, before I do that, sorry, I should have mentioned, of course, that we're part of the Global Media and Information Literacy Week 2024. The global conference is taking place in Amman next week, and of course, there's a lot of campaigns going on as well, a lot of activities across the globe in time with this special week. So Brittani, over to you.
Thank you so much, Sally. So welcome and thank you all for being here. I'm really excited to join Sally and Chloe on behalf of MediaWise. So I'm Brittani Kollar. I'm the Deputy Director at MediaWise. And just a brief background about who we are. We are the Media Literacy Initiative based at the Poynter Institute in Florida in the United States. MediaWise launched in 2018. Once here in the US, the term fake news really started to take off. And while we don't like to use that term, that kind of really started to drive this need for really applicable media literacy. So we launched in 2018. And we began with the Teen Fact-Checking Network. So our focus at first was on Gen Z. So really up-and-coming voters, how do we empower them to identify and to sort fact from fiction online? Because they are also on devices a lot. So from there, we grew over the past 5 to 6 years now, where we work with partners globally. Some of the who are on the call, Syed from DataLEADS at Fakshala, we partner with, and we've had the opportunity to grow what we do, to work with teens, to work with older adults, to work with everyone in between, and to meet them where they are through bite-sized media literacy projects and initiatives. That way, we service everyone, no matter if they have time to watch a 7-minute video or take an online course, or if they have time for a 5-minute or even 2-minute chunk of information. So that's what we do. our goal is that we empower people with media literacy skills to strengthen democracy and to rebuild trust in journalism. But what's most exciting that launched yesterday is we have rolled out a brand new media literacy curriculum that we are very excited. This was created in partnership with YouTube, along with colleagues from Media Smarts based in Canada, Parent Zone in the United Kingdom, and Mythos Lab in India. And so our purpose behind this is really that we wanted this to be a global curriculum that anyone, anywhere can use and to localize. Chloe, we can go to the next slide. And so these are just a few screen grabs that I have, and Chloe, feel free just to kind of scroll through these as I talk about it. But this curriculum is geared for 13 to 17-year-olds. So really, these were created with teens in mind. And we use our videos from our Teen Fact-Checking Network, which if you have not had the opportunity yet to check those out, we highly encourage it. These are a great group of teens, and they are very dedicated to what they are doing, and this initiative is global. But what we did with this is we created a curriculum where we use the Teen Fact-Checking Network. So it's for teens to be delivered by educators. And the content, we have both a 5-hour pacing guide or a 90-minute pacing guide. And any of these lessons in here can be broken down into bite-sized pieces. So you don't have to spend half a school day teaching this material. What you can do is select what you need. And if you only have 20 or 30 minutes, the teacher, the educator can pull that and can work with their students on it. So we are very excited. It includes ancillary materials, and you can find all of this at hitpausewithmediawise.com. And again, the mindset of this is that it can be used globally. So it was created to align with the International Society for Technology and Education Standards. And if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out. If you would like to partner for localization, don't hesitate to email me. Or you can also just access the material for free as you would like to use it, again, at hitpausewithmediawise.com. Back to you, Sally.
Thanks very much, Brittani. Great. Okay, so we want to now focus in specifically on the topic for today, which is all about AI and tailoring media literacy with AI. So I am really happy to start into our first presentation this afternoon, and that is Mariana. So Mariana Ochs is joining us from Brazil, and really looking forward to hear what you have to say, Mariana. And we'll take questions, of course, after your session as well, and we have lots of time for discussion over the afternoon. So over to you.
Thank you, Sally. I'm going to share my screen. It's really a pleasure to be here with all these organizations that I really admire. And I'm really looking forward to these conversations that we're going to have today. As Sally pointed, so you can see my screen, right?
Yep, no problem.
We are EducaMidia, which is a large media literacy program, large in scope and in reach. Brazil is a very large country, and we do a lot of teacher training, advocacy. We create and promote materials. We do programs in partnership with various government and civil society organizations. And we have been doing this for 5 years now. And what I wanted to share with you today is the way we are enlarging our curriculum to address AI and algorithmic literacy as part of media literacy. But before we do that, I wanted to share a quick experiment that I did with teachers just last night. Yesterday afternoon, I asked some teachers in my network to use this prompt. Everybody used kind of the same prompt, little variations on this. Generate an image of a Brazilian person of indigenous ethnicity. Now, this is really important because when I was growing up, for example, we had a sort of a single story view of people of indigenous descent, tribes in the Amazon in the north part of Brazil. And in the last couple of decades, we've been making a real concerted effort to include these people in the national dialogue and have them be representation in Congress, have them be part of the conversation, and not only learn about them, but learn from them. So I just, out of curiosity, asked teachers to generate images of Brazilian indigenous people. So this is the first lot that we got. I sort of classified them a little bit. So first of all, we got lots of hot, young, and shirtless people with feathers. I guess Brazilian is associated with sexy, shirtless, beach culture, young and beautiful. So first of all, we got that. Of course, the adornments are not even correct. There's a lot of sort of Cherokee, Sioux influence there. And then we get another set of materials, which is sort of this multicultural nations remix. And I see sort of traces of India, Bhutan, Peruvian, this young lady here with silver accessories. I see some Burning Man and the older guy with the feathers. I see Wakanda, I see Sioux, I see all kinds of things mixed in there. So we kept pushing forward. Some people even got, same prompt, right? No refining. Some people got, after a little bit of refining, some people got more realistic images, but still stereotyped, still single story. What are we missing from here? What are we not seeing? We're not seeing, now these are real images. We're not seeing, like we don't see in our textbooks, but we're not seeing in images generated by AI. We're not seeing people of indigenous descents that are doctors, designers, lawyers. We know they care about the environment, the forest and birds, but maybe they also care about basic universal income and maybe accessible healthcare, and maybe they're part of our society in general. So how do we address that as teachers are creating materials using AI? And not only that, how are we preparing the children to look at these materials and understand how algorithmic decisions are affecting what they see and sort of creating their world vision? So these are the pressing questions that we are trying to address right now. How are we addressing the vocabulary, the dilemmas of a reality that's mediated by algorithmics and AI, and is affecting what we see and how we see the world? How are we developing critical awareness with this generation that is sort of being fed things on a continuous scroll, things like TikTok that have even eliminated the friction of making decisions? What new skills and attitudes must we develop? So we understood that there's no way we can teach media literacy today without expanding the scope to address these new realities. And this is a set of skills that every citizen needs to have, not only students, but also teachers as they're working, as they're teaching, but also as they're creating materials. So the first thing that we needed was a definition, right, about what it means to be algorithmically literate. And so we sort of zeroed in on these things: perception, being able to note the presence and performance of algorithms in the systems that we use every day, because of course we're not concerned about teaching computing here, but we're sort of in this cross between computer science and social sciences, and we're trying to teach about the social technical environment with a democracy and a social justice lens. So it's about perception, understanding where we're being subject to algorithmic action in the services that we use every day, knowledge, knowing a little bit about how they work, observing their reach, their possibilities, their limitations, and being able to adjust them in a responsible and ethical and people-centered way. And critical appropriation means that we need to be able to observe the power dynamic, the economic interests that are baked into these things, and question them, right? So this is what we're treating as algorithmic literacy. Our main questions are, what does every citizen need to know about this human-machine environment, and how are we going to teach them? And how can we support non-computer science teachers to address these topics within their curricular subjects? So this is the scope of our curriculum. What is AI? How does it work? Risks and opportunity, ethics and power, right? Responsible use, and then media literacy, specifically for teachers, media literacy practices that incorporate looking at the AI and algorithmic environments. We created a suite of materials. First of all, really accessible basic instruction on what artificial intelligence is and how algorithms work. So there's an ebook with fundamentals, there's a glossary. It's all kind of colorful, made of short questions and answers, very accessible, basic vocabulary so that everybody's on the same page. Then we created this suite of materials. Everything that we produce, of course, is on the EducaMidia website, and it's open and free, and so are our trainings. So all these materials are accessible for anybody to download. And we think that they're flexible enough to be used in any context. So there are some teacher-facing materials, there are some student-facing materials that can be used in different contexts. But what we're really stressing throughout is that we are reinforcing traditional media literacy skills. It's still all about critical media analysis. It's still all about asking questions. So what do we do if we suspect something is AI generated? It's a deep fake. How do we counteract artificial intelligence with our most basic human skills? Observation, reason, and emotion. So these are materials, they're available on our website. I'm going to share with you some QR codes that give you access to our resources that are in English. Everything is on the EducaMidia website. And I just wanted to close by sharing this material that I saw yesterday produced by a teacher in a public school in Rio de Janeiro, a very poor region, a very low-income region. And she's using AI with her elementary school kids to produce some counter narratives and produce some culturally sensitive materials. So this is some really beautiful outcomes that we're starting to see when teachers are aware of the traps in the system and what we can do creatively to overcome this. Thank you so much, and I really look forward to our discussions.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Mariana. All right, and next we would like to introduce Syed Nazakat. He is the CEO and founder of DataLEADS, which is a fact-checking organization out of Delhi, India. But they also have launched Fakshala, which is a media literacy program, and they have quite the robust media literacy training network throughout India. So now, Syed, over to you.
Thanks a lot. Thank you so much. Really pleasure to be here. I will just try to share my screen quickly. So then just give me a minute and we should be okay here. Yes, thanks a lot. Thank you so much. Really pleasure to be here. And I was really hearing Mariana's thoughts on media literacy and then approaches and then challenges we have. I think they are quite global in terms of how we are essentially dealing with the global changing information landscape. I think things have fundamentally changed in the last 100 years, the way we produce, the way we consume information. And perhaps for the first time in the human history, we are having access to more information than ever before. So that really creates a challenge for people, what really to believe, what is truthful information, and what is misleading, harmful information. People really struggle across the world. Everyone is vulnerable. And we saw during COVID, after COVID, that people said, no, the misinformation is a problem of people who don't have a basic, like a degree or a college degree or university, and people who are illiterate, never been to schools, they are vulnerable and others are not. But we saw everyone becoming vulnerable, everyone facing a situation where they were not really able to understand what to deal with it. Now, when AI comes into picture, that also makes us the first technology in the human history which is actually making decisions and creating content on its own without human intervention. So it's quite a challenging situation, to be honest. How do we really deal with this whole shifting global information shifting space, and how do we make sense of it, and how do we really make our people, our communities, powerful enough with critical thinking and media literacy approaches and competencies to make sense of what to believe and what to consume and what kind of decision eventually to take from those situations. And we are seeing for the last since the whole generative AI thing happened, and we can absolutely see why West gets it so wrong when it comes to Asia, when it comes to India. Like every Indian man will look like a person with turban, with long beard, and it's really interesting. And you can try this on anything, and we tried it in hundreds of topics. They can show Indians still as a snake charmers. They can show Indian, when you look at typical Indian village, and they will show up image of an Indian village, which was maybe like 300 years ago. But if they come today, they will see the Indian villages are advanced and as good as better than the other villages and all. So a lot of this stereotyping happening essentially because the data on which these machines are actually modeled is really not cultural specific, is not really from from the regions on which we are working. And broadly speaking, I think these are, and Mariana hinted on these challenges. I think these are quite global in terms of the challenges we are facing at the moment, actually. And I think these are serious ones, to be honest. Like, when you see the amplification of biases is happening at an unprecedented rate, how they will depict particular community, how they will show a gender for that matter. If you do give a prompt about Indian woman, just Indian woman, and you will see the kind of images you will see out there. We will see also the reinforcing of cultural stereotypes as a very strong, element which we are trying to understand how to deal with that. We will also see the scale of misinformation which can go with AI actually at another level actually. Earlier, you can create a story, you can write it, share it, but now all the social media platforms are driven by AI, like algorithm. And then the speed on which they will share this content is reaching millions and millions of people. So how do we really deal with it? And do we really understand what's happening? Like we, in the sense, common people on the ground, do they really have idea how these data sets are working? Do they have an understanding how these social media platforms work actually? So I think these challenges, have been at the heart of our work in India. DataLEADS is a 9-year-old organization. We started actually a experiment of bringing different people together and saying, can we make sense of information we have around? And as Brittani mentioned, one of our major projects is the Fakshala, which has reached almost 66 million people in India in the last 4 years. We adopted a model of training model at a large, massive scale in India, in which hundreds of people applied, but eventually we selected 250 trainers who were basically media professors, editors, community leaders, community radio stations and all. They got trained, they went back, they trained more people, And you can see millions of, people getting benefited in this process. And one of the key learning for us was, again, engaging community radio stations as well, actually. So we hardly thought community radio stations will have a reach of reaching people. And then we figured out that no, they have a reach and they have an interesting reach. They actually reach people at a community level, at a district level, at the province level. And then that approach became quite successful. But at the same time, we also worked in metros, in big cities, in big TV station, in almost everywhere, to be honest. Every single day, there is a Fakshala training happening somewhere in India in 20 languages, run by local, media professors, community leaders. And this also gave us a lot of data points to understand what really is working on ground and what is not working. And one of the things more recently, when the deepfakes became quite a challenge, we also thought, how do people trust and who do they trust actually? And with the Poynter Institute, in collaboration with them, we started, like a Fakshala ambassador program. And what an incredible success this program has been. We have 4 ambassadors on board. The person you're seeing on board is Ritu Kapoor, one of India's most reputed media newsroom leader and all. So the whole ambassador program was based on a thought process that if people can trust even individuals and those individuals endorse good information, we can reach a lot of people. So Ritu, when she became the ambassador, one of the videos she did actually out of the 8 video series was how do you protect yourself from deepfakes? And those videos are being watched on YouTube and other places in remote parts of India, and people are actually learning from a credible voice how do we protect ourselves. We're also looking at the again is it just the media and media educators who are the stakeholders, or there are other people in this business who can actually guide us well? Through a Shakti project, another one major project we did ahead of Indian elections, trying to protect people actually, and also training newsrooms and others, how do you protect yourself from deepfakes? We also learned, and despite there was a lot of fear about Indian elections, we also learned there was not too much deepfake content about Indian elections, just 2% out of all the media content actually. And the reason for that essentially was that there's a substantial cost still needed in terms of developing sophisticated, like a deepfakes, particularly in local languages, in Indian languages, which was not available at that time. So that doesn't really mean that we don't have a danger of deepfakes, but the challenge is we need a lot of stakeholders here. The people you see on the screen are three India's leading AI professors actually, and they helped us actually to understand why European and American fact-checking models are not so good for Indian market, to be honest, because they don't understand the language. And one of the Professor Mayank Vasta on the picture, his institute actually created a Indian deepfake analysis tool actually, which became extremely useful because it was also taking care of Indian languages. So the local language, local context really matter. And the one concluding thought, which I think really is a challenging situation for us, particularly when we go to India, we go to Asia, you go to Bangladesh, Malaysia, is also what is getting filtered eventually. And who takes that decision actually, what to show and what not show to people, or young kids, older population and all. And do we have a visibility? Because when we actually restrict information, what does that mean actually? Does that disempower people? And who takes that decision actually, how much to filter and what to filter and what to show? And I think people really do not have, you can say, that visibility often actually when it comes to the consuming online information. So we have a Factshare website. If anyone is interested, they can look at there. But thank you so much, and I really look forward, having a discussion later when we have question and answer session.
Thank you so much, Syed. That is so interesting. I'm sure we're going to come back to that. Many of the issues that you've raised there, particularly about localization of resources, how can we use resources across borders at all very, very challenging, of course. So thank you so much. We've started to get the first questions into the chat. Please feel free to continue to add, but I'd like to then move on to our third speaker this afternoon. And so I'm really delighted to be welcoming Louise Hisayasu. She is Senior Project Coordinator with Tactical Tech. Over to you, Louise.
Thank you so much. Yeah, thank you for the invite. And also, it's just an honor to hear about the work of DataLEADS and EducaMidia. I'm from Tactical Tech. We're an organization based in Berlin, in Germany, but our team is very international. And today, I mostly wanted to share with you, I think, 3 different public engagement projects, which all of you can also be using, that try to unpack artificial intelligence, which is, I think it's still a big topic that we're all still trying to understand. Okay, so the first is a project which we've just launched today, just this morning. It's called Supercharged by AI, and we're looking at the different how AI supercharges different online harms. The 4 main kind of topics that we cover in this exhibition are how AI impacts online harassment, particularly deepfakes, how AI impacts online scams, how AI impacts the data-driven political influence industry. So we look at like the very opaque industry of political influence, and how AI is starting to kind of shift the way that this industry works. And then finally, we talk a lot about stereotype amplification. And by that, this is just a screenshot from that project, which I think is quite related with the 2 last presentations we've seen. So the stereotype machines, it's 2 different books, and we've asked an image generator generate an image of an Italian family, an Estonian family. I think we have 5 different countries. And then we've collected the 36 images that this model, Stable Diffusion, has generated. And then what we start to do in this printed book is peel back the different layers of what the machine is generating. So we have a layer for the faces, we have a layer for the sort of clothes and bodies, and then a layer for the background. And in each of these layers, we're mostly just getting people to ask questions, like in the background layer, asking questions like, are the families portrayed mainly indoors or outdoors? Is the setting more rural, more metropolitan? And what kinds of objects are surrounding the family? So what does this say about what the machine thinks about an Italian family, for example? So yeah, we just sort of try to guide people to start asking questions of the different images or texts that they're generating. A second project that I wanted to share today are the data detox kits. So the Data Detox Kit is, you can find online articles, you can find workshops, workshop outlines, and the one kind of criteria to make something a data detox kit is that it can provide practical tips and steps that you can take at home. So we just launched, I think, around a month ago, 5 new data detox on the topic of artificial intelligence. So you can start with what's the buzz with AI, where we just kind of break down the terminology and try to demystify why there's so much of a buzz. And then just like with the Supercharged by AI exhibition, we mirror a lot of the thematics. So there's articles here on bias, there's AI in elections, scams, and online harassment. In the Data Detox Kit, besides giving some practical tips, we also usually work around getting people to reflect. So one of our tips is to interrogate AI by asking critical questions about how the models are built, trained, maintained. For example, who owns the companies that create these models? Who's most at risk? Do the risks outweigh the benefits? Things like that. So I suggest if you're interested in, other ways to frame this discussion on AI that's a little bit less technical and a little bit more on how it sort of affects all of us as individuals, as societies, then I recommend checking out these articles. The Data Detox Kit, it was designed to go along with those Glassroom exhibitions, like the Supercharged, and it used to be a little kit that you would take home after exhibitions. We've since then have been developing other types of easy to replicate exhibitions. For example, the Data Detox Bar. So in this image, we turn all of those tips. So beyond AI, we also talk about digital privacy, digital security, online well-being, and misinformation. And we turn them into drinks. And each of those little cards have the tips at the back. And yeah, I think around a month ago, we also released the bar specific to AI, in case anyone is interested. And the last project I wanted to present today is more oriented towards youth. So this is a project called What the Future Wants. And it's a version of the Glassroom, but for youth. And for this exhibition, which we launched earlier this year, it's called Everywhere All the Time. I think there's a total of 6 different topics in this exhibition, but we talk a lot about chatbots, so just an explainer on how they work, where the data comes from, where the source material comes from, and then just to try to demystify a little bit the chatbot, and also one on algorithms. And also in this slide, a piece which I think is very important to us, which is the hidden labor behind not only AI, but technologies in general. So here we try to visualize the different roles that are often hidden of tech workers, gig workers. Yeah, maybe just one last thing before I switch the slide. I just want to say that a lot of this content is available everywhere all the time. Data Detox Kit also freely available in over 20 languages. So please do get in touch if any of this content is interesting and useful. I have my contact details on this slide and also all of our other platforms. Thank you so much.
Louise, thank you so much for the overview, and also thank you for all of the links that have gone into the chat for everybody to see and to use, and in fact to all of our speakers so far, because I think, Brittani, we both agree that this is lots of resources for people to use which is really, really nice. And thanks indeed, Mariana. The design is really nice on Louise's resources. We were going to take a few minutes before we go into the break, just for any questions that we have, anything. So maybe I'll just take, there's a first one there from Asli to put to you, Asli Abasi, and he says, or he or she says, forgive me, hello everyone, what solutions can be advised to the nations of developing countries to address the challenge of media literacy caused by AI, including deepfake videos, which can be distributed to religious groups and can lead to local unrest and violence, especially against women and girls of different religious backgrounds? You probably all had a chance to look at that. Maybe I could just start with Mariana. Any response you'd like to give, Asli, on that?
Yes, thanks. This is a really thoughtful question. I think, in my view, we mustn't get sidetracked from, what we've always worked on, which is media literacy, critical media analysis skills. Just because it's AI, it's just a new layer, it's just a new tool. And so when we look at deepfake disinformation, there's the layer of trying to look at the message itself and try to understand if there are any telltale signs, inconsistencies, lighting, lack of sync, and so on. But it's mostly about understanding motivation and context, and talking about propaganda and talking about how propaganda talks to certain communities' specific fears and frailness. And so how these things are directed on purpose to cause fear in different cultural contexts. So we need to talk about persuasive language, we need to talk about propaganda, we need to talk about conspiracy theories and how we identify those things. So it's about media literacy skills that, and it's not about fact checking. It's about really understanding context and message and lateral reading and so on. So in a sense, we mustn't side away from that. Just because it's a new tool, it's still the same skills and old questions.
Syed or Louise, you'd like to follow up on that? Syed, maybe?
Yeah, I think challenge certainly, certainly is of how do we really empower people and to deal with this huge new challenge actually, and who is going to invest in this? We come from the part of the world where there's really very rare investments in the media literacy. I remember 5 years ago, it was not even actually taught as a subject in most of colleges and universities, even in primary schools. But now, because the conversation is changing slowly, there is an investment of Fakshala, particularly in India, which really made a huge difference here. There is a lot of discussion about public schools, private schools, other educational institutes, that what kind of investments we need actually, including having faculty members who can actually teach media literacy of another level, because who is actually training faculties as well? So I think there's a dearth of also understanding what is happening with the larger information ecosystem. A lot of people still do not really understand what really synthetic media is, what really the deepfake, what really deepfake actually means, to be honest. And is there a way you can verify this content, not verify this content? And the biggest challenge is actually that's the challenge we are seeing, that people are slowly not really able to understand how to deal with it, what to consume. You must have seen the financial scams in India that have really created panic in the country, and millions of dollars people are losing money every single day because of these, like audio generated, AI generated audio, generated messages which go to a parent saying that your kid is kidnapped and you give so much money, and things are happening. Doctors are getting duped. Everyone is getting duped. And there's almost every national bank is trying to understand how to deal with this huge, massive AI-driven financial scams, actually. So I completely agree with what Mariana is saying. There's a challenge of technology. There are new things happening, which is making it complex. But somewhere down the line, we need to really help people to understand that they need to build a capacity of reasoning, critical thinking, verifying, not trusting everything which they see online.
Louise?
Yeah, I completely agree with Mariana and Syed. I don't have too much more to add, just that I think there's such a hype right now with AI, and it seems like this brand new thing that's kind of come and changed everything. But I do think that way before AI, we're already seeing similar scenarios with cheap fakes, for example, where videos taken out of context, doctored in not necessarily super high-tech ways. And so I think that like sometimes cutting away from the hype and just understanding that AI is a tool just like other technologies that have come before it might be just a little bit helpful, because there is just a lot in the media right now that can be kind of confusing or overwhelming.
I will say, just to all your points, it really is, it's a new technology, but the skills are what have been around. And really my mind just goes to emotions. Anything, what I hear from what all three of you have said is anything that triggers a strong emotional reaction, you know, whether it's a scam and it's financial, or whether it's something that could divide, you know, different groups of people or communities. It's really about just taking a moment, if you see something that generates a strong emotional reaction, to not act on it. I do want to open the floor over to Dr. Mahmood. You have a raised hand.
Yeah. Hello everyone. I am Vikas Mahmood, basically from Pakistan. I recently completed my on this misinformation and political information, and I use the media literacy, and one more thing is media in theoretical framework. I want to address the question also, that I want to actually add one more thing, is basically I am teaching university and I also teach the subjects or related to social media, and I always encourage students to learn about the media literacy, and I always said to my student that just stop sharing everything on social media, and just even from the walls of others, and everyone is sharing, just because you have to break chain of misinformation and even government is doing nothing. I know about the Indian governments and Indian organization. They are working very good, and they have introduced the courses of media literacy and related to social media at school level. Even I know about the, but here no, the government is not doing anything related to introducing some courses, because I think according to the modern studies, the media literacy is the only solution of actually the problems created by the information disorder. But I think the governments and even the organizations are not realizing about that. And I think that every university, every school, every college must introduce some, or even just one course related to the problems of social media, and it will be helpful to control the problem of information disorder.
Thank you, Dr. Mahmood. It was somewhat hard to hear you, so if you want to write your notes in the chat, that would be greatly appreciated.
In the meantime, I would like to raise a question from Jonathan, who's joining us from the Moffat Institute. He said, how would you recommend approaching AI critical thinking and media literacy with young children? Which I think is a very good question. So maybe we could just get a round from everybody, just particularly aiming at young children. Maybe we could start with you first, Louise.
Yeah, actually, we don't really work with young children. I think the youngest we sort of worked with before was around 13 or 14. But I could talk about one method there. So through working in co-creation. So co-creating with them. So we would run like different co-creation workshops that would last a couple of days. And in it, understand what are some of the concerns, what are some of the debates that age group wanted to have. And maybe with young children, that could be an interesting kind of topic, just to try to understand different characters and different different concerns as well.
Okay, thanks, Louise. What about you, Mariana? Do you work with young children?
We do. We get these. It's our natural tendency to gear those materials towards middle school and up, and then we always get these questions from teachers. Well, what about young children? And I think it's an awesome question. I just finished reading Faith Virgo's book on media literacy for young children, which highlights something that's really important. This is a really important stage to build values, attitudes, and vocabulary for dealing with more complex things later on. And so it's about developing this mindset of interrogating what we see and understanding why we think what we think and asking questions. And we can do this even before they know how to read. We can do this questioning the packaging on their toys and the cover on the picture books that they read. So we're going to slowly build this attitude of sort of moving away from mindless consumption of things and interrogating what we see, and more importantly, understanding why we think what we think. And then, of course, we need to also build awareness of the presence and the functioning of algorithms and artificial intelligence. And I just wanted to share with you a really quick example that a teacher I was working with did with fifth graders. And it was a Spanish language, because a Spanish language teacher, we're trying to work on this idea that anybody can incorporate a little bit of AI instruction in their teaching. They were preparing materials about Don Quixote for an exhibition. And so they fed the AI a passage from the textbook in Spanish to generate illustrations of Don Quixote and Sancho Panza, the Spanish literature heroes from the 16th century. And of course, the kids got six-legged horses and Don Quixote with baseball hats and all kinds of hallucinations and things that looked like Game of Thrones. So we started those, and certain words were blocked, like Sancho was chubby. Chubby was blocked. They had to find synonyms. So they're working the language, and they're trying to understand, they're starting to see in a very hands-on experiential way, which is also very important at this stage, that AIs are fallible, that there are human decisions behind it, that certain words are filtered, certain words are being blocked. So all those things are, and then we, of course, you can have discussions about that. So all of those things are things that we can do with things that are like, kindergarten and elementary school.
And you can never start early enough. I think that's a really good message to take across. Thanks.
From the moment that they're exposed to media, we need to talk about it, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Syed, what about you? Reaching young children?
Yes, certainly. I know we do a couple of major projects actually involving young kids across actually. And I think one of the things we have been really finding which quite works with the young kids has been just whenever we do workshops with them or conversation with them about the challenges of misinformation and the dangers of it. We often prefer the most of structure of workshops is actually you allow them to sketch or you allow them to do a part of activity, like explain them what do they really know about AI, have they heard about the name, when was the first time, last time, can they visualize what the AI means? So some people can make like a line or an elephant or something, the structure. So essentially, and then maybe take them through step by step actually what really it is also in a very simple in terms. For example, we do often a story of 3 donkeys in India as a part of critical thinking exercise. And we found that every time we tell that story of 3 donkeys, every kid in the room, actually the topic resonates. And we don't need a laptop, we don't need a projector. We just have these posters with 3 donkeys. We pass on those sketches to them, and they come back fully understanding the meaning of that we have to always know how to verify things and not trust everyone. And a stranger and all. India is also very unique experience from a misinformation perspective. And the misinformation wave came to India actually in 2015-16 through child safety videos, which became actually a lynch mob. And because of them, 40 people got lynched and killed actually. The videos were essentially about child safety, but somebody edited those videos and then circulated them through WhatsApp and other social media platform, which was that don't leave kids on the road. A stranger will come and kidnap your children. And then those videos became viral and unfortunately, there was a anger, there was a frustration, or a lynch mob went ahead and killed 40, 50 people. That's actually how we started at DataLEADS, and that's how Google started investing resources, and other organizations started investing resources in India, because we knew it's not just a joke. It's not just somebody just playing with something. It has a real life situation. Actually, it may end up taking somebody's life.
Thank you, Syed, and thanks so much to Celine and Ellie also for posting information, and also for that book as well from Mariana. Thanks for everything in the chat. Brittani, I think we've time for one more question, don't we, before we go into the breakouts?
Yes, and you know, just a quick thought too is, if we're educating children now, and these AI models are built upon societal biases, perhaps the next generation can change that input, which produces a new output. Over, Sergio, do you have a question? You have your hand raised.
Yes, thank you very much. First of all, I would like to really thank the people of Tactical Tech, because we are using their materials. I'm a librarian at the university in Argentina, in José C. Paz. We give a workshop on digital literacy and media literacy, and we use their material. Not to, and that's what I wanted to share, is it's not to give something to them, but to give a safe space for them to reflect and give their own thoughts. And that's the key point on media literacy, I think, is because they are already interacting with the media and with the internet and the applications, and they have already their own thoughts and the reality that is affecting them. And with the materials of Tactical Tech, we made an exercise, for example, like, imagine the algorithm you're always interacting with. How will you if you have to make it a character, how you will design it? And the reflections they put in the pictures were amazing. They draw it as a spider web, as a spiral, as a friendly face that was taking and grabbing their time and their money. And it's very interesting to give to always have the aim to give a safe space for them to express themselves. I think that's the key point in the media literacy. At least our experience, it's been very, very also insightful for us to listen what they have to say.
Yeah.
And regarding young children, I'm as a father of a 6-year-old and a 9-year-old. The danger I see is these online games. And they are already creating a very strong digital subjectivity on the digital self in young children, that even friends of my daughters are asking for a birthday gives things for their avatars, not for themselves. And I think it's very dangerous. I think this Roblox and Minecraft, and that's is creating a very strong digital subjectivity by companies that have only the aim to produce consumers, digital consumers, and the digital world is a place to be and to grow, and that subjectivity in young children from age 6, 8, 7 is very dangerous.
So I think,
sorry, it's not the questions, that's the reflections that.
Sure. I think many of us.
Share.
Thanks very much. I think many of us would certainly share your concerns as well too. So, but thank you so much for sharing that with us. We're going to take, Chloe has us all organized to go into breakout rooms now, because we wanted to have an opportunity for small group discussions. So we're going to split up into 3, and we're going to come back at about 10 past the hour, wherever you are. It's here in Central Europe, it's coming up to 3 o'clock. We'll be back at 10 past 3, but in quite short opportunities. I think we were hoping to have a little bit more time, but the groups are closed. So I think we have everybody back in at the moment. Is that right, Chloe? Okay.
Yes, I apologize for that little technical problem on my side.
Okay, not to worry. I think, Brittany, what we do is maybe I'd like to just finish. There was a sentence in our group that was being replied to, probably the same in yours and probably the same in Jesse's. So let's just do that for the benefit of everybody in our group. So Louise, you were just saying, we were asking you whether you wanted to hear from people when they were using your resources in tactical tech. So maybe you could just finish that for us, Louise, and then I'll hand over to Brittany and then to Jesse.
So the question was if we also have a mechanism to track when events are happening, because so far I think with the Glassroom we've had over 800 events in 71 countries. So I know that there's probably more that I'd love to know about, but not only to track it or report it, but also because we have a lot of mechanisms, whether it's tactical text platforms or newsletters, our websites, to be able to also promote the work that you're doing. And connect you with others. Like we hosted a regional convening for South and Central American partners. We've had regional convenings for partners in Africa. And so it's also a nice way that we can connect you further.
Great, thank you. Over to you, Brittany.
Yes, so Rabeb was in the middle of a question. If she can come back on and can finish.
Yes.
Okay, there we go.
Brittani, I hope you can hear me very well now.
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
I was talking about the experience in Tunisia while fact-checking most of the claims to fact-check is coming from officials, unfortunately, in some candidates. So comparing to the elections, like the official who's supposed to give accurate those who are spreading misinformation. So I was wondering, did you face an issue like that while the officials are those who are spreading misinformation? And the second thing is regarding AI tools. Usually when we want to fact check through AI tools, it's all expensive. And we couldn't we are, for example, for pictures, we are using Hugging Face mostly, but for others, for example, for the detection of deep fake videos or other videos, we couldn't sometimes we don't find tools, and when we find tools, it's always expensive and hard to use. Thank you.
Syed, do you want to answer? She was in your group.
No, I think I lost in between. I was not able to hear actually the full question, so I'm missing it in between, but I'm sorry for it actually.
No, it's okay. So, go ahead, Sally.
Sonia, go on, Brittany. Fine.
Oh no, so what I was able to pick up, and Rabeb just hop in if I don't capture it. So in her experience, it was government officials that were spreading false information, misinformation. So how to fact check that, and then also how to fact check AI information, and then educate on that with media literacy through all the different tools when they're changing. I think that's everything that I was able to catch. Sally, did you hear anything different?
I can take that. So fact checking AI driven content is a tough thing. In the whole India, we have one university which came up with a tool which checks the fact check content, and that's also not 100% accurate all the time. Globally, there are one or two organizations which have developed tools for fact check, Storyful in London, Witness in US, and a couple of others. So that's really one of the major dangers of the technology, because the more sophisticated it's becoming. Earlier we used to tell, pay attention to lips, pay attention to fingers. But now in the last 6 months, the technology has advanced further. You don't see actually those things actually anymore. So use is a extremely high level of technology. And imagine again, we are still at an embryonic stage of AI. In the next 2, 3, 4 years, imagine the sophistication and how convincing the content become. So I think that is a big question mark. How do we really deal, and how do we fact check the content? Coming to the governments, I think that is the problem across. You must have seen the situation in Singapore, for that matter, Indonesia, in other countries as well. So I think political parties, for that matter, who are running for different elections and all, they have dedicated agencies who create content for them. And sometimes in that election campaigning process as well, they end up actually spreading mis and disinformation. There's also an organized industry, which actually is a commercial entities who create misinformation in case of Russia, in case of other stakeholders globally. You can also see then, the governments are also in the business of fact checking. And in some parts of Asia, for example, the governments have established their own fact check units, saying we will decide what is true and what is false. Indian Supreme Court, in a landmark decision just a month back, has said the government of India cannot establish its own fact check unit. So I think there's a lot of debate happening. It's a challenging situation, to be honest. I think we need a lot of discussion, a lot of conversation with a lot of multiple stakeholders to really be prepared for the future.
Maybe we could go to Jessie then. Jessie, your group with Mariana, just for the finishing out and maybe the summary.
So we do have the question that was in process as we returned to the group in the chat, which was, are teenagers and young people and also some adults perceive AI media conversations or concerns as a mythology or life hack? So how do we deal with that in class? And Mariana, I'll pass that to you.
Yeah, that's a difficult challenge, but I think it goes back to being able to establish that media literacy is a right, and that information is public good, and access to quality information is a right. But we also like to say when we talk about media literacy that it concerns our rights and also our duties, because we all have a shared responsibility for the integrity of the media environment, of the information environment. And that has to start early on. So again, if we're gonna out of the blue say, hey, teenager, I have a 16-year-old son, by the way, and if I say to him, well, since you have me here at home, let's have a really interesting qualified discussion about disinformation and AI, he's gonna say, oh, Mom, really? But it has to be a culture. It has to be something that we infuse into teaching from an early age, and we do it throughout schooling, and we establish as a right. And so what I find is that when we start to have these conversations with teachers or with families even, and then with kids, and we say, hey, do you know what's behind this thing that you use every day? It's really important to associate it with something that they know and they use every day, right? Their lived experience. Do you know what's behind this? Let's unpack it. Let's peel off some of the layers. And then they find it interesting. And it's really empowering. But we really have to build up this culture of sort of this larger background context of why is this important and why is this right? And why is this affecting everybody, not just you?
Thanks, Mariana. I'm going to hand it over to Brittani now.
All right. So as we start to wrap up, we have about 15 minutes left. If anyone has any questions, please continue to put those in the chat. I think that will work a little easier. So we make sure there's stable connections. But so for our panelists, so a question is, we've talked about media literacy is about synthesization. Sorry, I've not had enough coffee. Synthesization of information, right? And now that synthesization is being put into the hands of artificial intelligence. So, and that often misses out on cultural nuances that people can miss out on that are really a human knowledge. So as we teach students of any age AI literacy, how do we keep the student moving in a positive space while not missing out on those cultural nuances? Thoughts?
Yeah, I think that we have to be really careful with this, because on one hand, you have all the hype, right? And everybody's pushing AI tools in schools and AI tools for teaching and AI tools for school management. And how are we going to deal with kids like cheating on their homework? So that's one conversation. The other conversation is look at all these potential harms, look at bias, look at the cultural eraser, all of those things. And so there's a balance, right? There's a healthy place in between those things. It's really important that we don't create all from the media literacy perspective, that we don't create just all these materials saying how horrible AI is, and look at all the harms, even environmental harms, because there have been significant technological innovations and advancements that can be had with the help of AI. And even in our daily lives, it's made a lot of things easier. And so it's important to sort of show that it's something that's really potentially very good if there's governance, if we know how it understands, if we can demand that it's human-centered, if we know that it's there and how it works, and we can adjust its functioning. So I think it's about sort of understanding all aspects of it and not having this sort of like these bipolar kind of like, this is great, this is a hype, or this is horrible, and it's going to destroy humanity,
Thank you, Syed. Louise?
Yeah, I see the value in actually having a very open conversation with everyone, to be honest. So if we oversimplify sometime, there's also a challenge in that, for that matter. If we complicate it and make it like that is going to be a doomsday, that also is not going to work for us.
Mm-hmm.
So I think we need to have a very honest conversation that this is the challenge we're having, and we need to deal with it. It's like having a COVID and having a virus, and it spreads widely. And we started having very open conversation that we need to put a mask on, we need to have a social distance, and we will be better in some time. This will not be permanent and all. So I think right now what's happening, there's a lot of disruption in the information networks and information landscape, a lot of disruption actually. And that, particularly maybe the way the global order is shaped, the images from Gaza, the images from Ukraine, the whole content out there, everybody's consuming it, to be honest. So I think we really have to make sure that, we don't really come up with a situation where we are so pessimistic about information that we stop consuming actually even a good information. And we have seen people avoiding news, people reducing the exposure to news, because they feel like it's all sad, it's all bad, and it's all fake. And they kind of take back and they say, we are happy in our own spaces, doing whatever, but not engaging with information. That will be really tough for democracies, particularly because we want our people to know things and then take informed decisions. So I think engagement is and being honest about such challenges as well, that this is a challenge. Media literacy is not really going to solve all the problems of AI and the harms related to it, but it is a one shield which can protect us to some level. Regulations have a certain role. The tech platforms have a role there. The transparency of technology, the data sets, everything. And they need to come, like suddenly one fine day, OpenAI came into picture and the whole world started following them without actually knowing what the whole thing is. So I think everybody has a role to play, but I think media literacy certainly is a one major shield which can empower us to protect ourselves.
Yeah, I agree with Mariana and Syed. Maybe what I can add to that is that there have been really great applications of AI. Like if you think about speech recognition, spam filtering, spell checking, there are great things, especially when I think I read in a book, which I really liked, this idea that AI is whatever hasn't been done yet, but when it works reliably but quietly, we often don't think about it as AI. And so I think we can think about it also in 3 stages. Like we could think about what is us as users, what is the conscious interaction that we have with generative AI tools when we, for example, prompt. Maybe we can already prompt in a way that's being more descriptive. So rather than writing, like in that piece I showed, generate a picture of an Italian family, that we're descriptive in what we want to see in that kind of composition. We can also think about the both intentional and unintentional consequences of when we consume synthetic media. That's like a lot, but when we come across AI generated content and either knowing or not knowing what it is, I think media literacy comes in a big way there. And then finally, I think separating that when there is a harmful deployment or misuse of AI tools, for example, for scams or for political persuasion, that's kind of one piece of it, but not necessarily the whole spectrum. So being able to separate the different times that we interact with AI, because I do think that we often use the umbrella term AI very interchangeably.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, this discussion makes me think of, I listened to AI futurist Nikita Roy, and she mentioned large language models generate language, but people generate knowledge. And I really think that that is a key that I keep hearing over and over again. Over to you, Sally.
Thanks, Brittany, and thanks for the comments as well that we're getting in from Sergio's nice point about it's good enough to say, so far this tool is biased, just consider it when you use it. So thanks for the inputs, and please, we have a little bit more time, so if you have more questions, please put them into chat to us. I just wanted to put a question maybe to our three panelists at the moment, because teaching AI literacy to audiences who are not tech literate probably has its own set of challenges, and who may not know how to do a reverse image search or use platforms to search the metadata of an image. So I just wondered if you have any practical tips to share with us about that particular group of people. Mariana, maybe I could come to you first, the non-tech literate.
Yeah, this is a very important question for us, because Brazil is very culturally and socioeconomically diverse. And when we do our trainings, we do a lot of teacher trainings. We have to understand that one size does not fit all. And people are going to take these very differently depending on their context, their level of digital maturity, the availability of technology in their school environments, and even the level of digital literacy that teachers themselves have. And so I think it's really important to sort of walk people through things that they do, as I said before, in their daily lives and what's involved in that, and start unpeeling some of these questions. We just released a very, very basic training on search. It's really amazing how something that is so simple and so present is so little taught. Every teacher in the world says at one point to their students, "Well, do a search on," and how many people are actually, librarians here being the happy exception, how many teachers are actually taking time to teach their students how to do an assertive search and evaluate what they see and what's good for their intended purposes, or do image search. So Google Search has put out a resource with the American Association of Libraries, and we translated it and localized it, because that's one of the very basic building blocks of more complex things that we're going to do later on that we need to make sure that we cover. So it's really important not to overlook those basic building blocks. And sometimes this is all people are going to be able to do, and we want them to be able to take a step and advance in their understanding and their autonomy from where they are, no matter where that is. We're going to celebrate those results, no matter how small they seem.
Big step, though, indeed, in terms of everyday practice. Thanks very much, Mariana. Syed, what about you? Reaching to the non-technically,
Yeah, most of our trainings actually happen in villages and small towns, actually, across the country. And we really make sure that, we think of them, that they don't even have basic, you can say, smartphone or a laptop or whatever, computer and all. So I think a lot of things is like a storytelling, actually. So we use like a media literacy as a storytelling. Even if a couple of printouts in the hand, and then you tell a story, you explain the major fundamental concepts in a way that they really understand and resonate. And language is huge. Gender is huge. Sometimes it makes a huge difference whether trainer is a male and female, actually. And, when you particularly go and interact, with people and communities on the ground, the cultural differences and everything. So I think most of our training is essentially built and designed, and curriculum is designed, keeping in mind people who actually do not have access to internet or to laptops and projectors and other things.
Okay, low IT literacy required. Louise, what about you? That target group?
Yeah, similar. Like I think the base of the project of the Glassroom started out, what I didn't show in the slides were these actual exhibition spaces that were mimicking those Apple stores, because what we realized is that what sort of big tech and Apple, through their design and architecture and impressive shops, did was creating the space where people could meet and exchange and talk. And so we tried to create a mirror space through these exhibitions where people could just gather around also a lot of analog artworks and art objects to just discuss and debate and talk about how technology is changing our lives, not only for the bad, but also for the good. I think that's what we need, our spaces to be able to have those debates. And so I think, at least for us, the exhibitions are just a tool that partners or different communities can use to create those spaces for debate.
Yeah.
Yeah. I do also find that a lot of our materials are not talking about tech in a necessarily technical way. And so it's very important to always apply like certain tools or technologies or techniques to specific cases. So with reverse image search, for example, we applied that specifically to fact-checking posts on social media, so that people also understand at what moments can you use those tools. And then when you sort of have that emotional reaction that Brittany mentioned earlier, you know the different methods or tools at your disposal.
Louise, thanks. We're just going to one quick final question, just if anybody has any tips they can share with us, and that's from Jenny, because as she says, there is so much excellent material around, but not much in smaller languages like Swedish or many other language groups who are with us today. Are there any established processes for translating content, such as the work done by Tactical Tech? Anything quickly anyone can share in terms of being able to quickly translate? Mariana, I see you nodding.
You know, we like to say that we think globally and we act locally, because we don't need to reinvent the wheel. There's so much great material out there. There's so many organizations doing excellent work. So what we do is that we approach the organization and say, hey, we're a large media literacy organization in Brazil, and can we translate your materials and credit them fully, but make them more accessible to like the wider population in Brazil? And that's worked really well for us so far. You know, so
Okay.
Translated a number of different things.
Thanks, Mariana. Syed, quick
Yeah, no,
translation tips?
Yeah, like we usually do translate like the content across language, Indian languages, if we do the Indian, but we have a training on health misinformation, for example, and that is available in Spanish as well, English, Spanish, and Portuguese for that matter. I think translation remains a challenge in terms of we cannot really completely translate in another, like a country or a region. Like in case of Factual Ambassador Program, we extremely benefited with our collaboration with the Poynter, because it was a global, you can say, a framework, but then we contextualized it to Indian audiences with Indian, case studies and everything, and then translated it into Hindi, Malayalam, and other languages here. So I think it works to get those local nuances together and local context better. But in terms of framework, because sometimes what happens also is the framework, and there are amazing resources available as of today now about, larger media literacy, competencies required. So if we get the framework right, then couple of, a little bit hard work around getting case studies, local context, that together, and I think it should be good enough to be used with a target audience, pilot audience, and tried for some time.
Finding local partners, I think, is what you're also hinting at there, which is really important. Louise, any last comment on that, on the translocalization before we stop?
Just one, which is that like through our licensing, we use Creative Commons licenses. And I think that's also an important part for anyone creating work. You can be quite open and say no derivatives, but translation is allowed, or you can, use the materials as long as they're not for commercial purpose. And I think that's for us something that it's very important to keep the resources and the information open access.
Good point, yeah. So Creative Commons is the way to go, of course, when we're dealing with these. Okay, look, we're coming to an end. Brittany, any last thoughts from you before we bring the session to an end?
No, this was wonderful. And just as I mentioned in the chat, really leaning on partnerships and collaborations across countries you can't just translate one thing. It's materials exist, they're important. It's not just translating, it's contextualizing to make sure your audience receives and learns with the material. But I really appreciated all of you to be here today.
Absolutely. I think it's been a great session from our point of view. Thank you to the 26 of you that are still with us to the bitter end. I don't know who's the earliest, who's the latest. I know our friends in Brazil are probably quite early in the day, and Brittany are probably early in the day. Some of you may be later in the day, but thank you so much for being with us this afternoon. I think we just wanted to share a couple of quick slides and reminders. We wanted to, first of all, highlight the fact that we are collaborating closely with UNESCO this week on the Global Media Information Literacy Week. Officially starts on Thursday, but of course there's events running all the way around the world, including online events like ours going on this week. But there's also a campaign that's going on at the moment, Post with Care campaign. So please join with us, reshare, all the resources are available, and help us to get the message out and to work collaboratively as a community. So that's the first campaign we wanted to tell you about. The second one is Media Smart Online. This is a campaign being run by the Better Internet for Kids organisation here in Europe. It's been organised with European SchoolNet. The rollout of this campaign is starting again on the 24th of October, and it's going to run approximately for 1 month, this campaign. And it's also working with the Safer Internet Centres. So please watch out for that one as well. Be media smart. That's really important. And then just to say, the rest of the week, this week, we have an event taking place tomorrow, same time, online again. This time we're running it with the Media Education Lab on building resilient communities and using media literacy to fight extremism, hate and violence. So if you haven't signed up for that one, please do so. Next one will take place on Thursday, and we're running that together with the Deutsche Welle Academy on media literacy for marginalized communities. And then finally on Friday, in collaboration with EDMO, the European Digital Media Observatory, we're running a training session on moving beyond the hype, practical strategies for successful influencer collaborations in media literacy, which we think is really, really important. Don't forget, that's our YouTube channel. You'll be able to find a recording of this session in the not too distant future. And of course, as always, Chloe will be sharing with everybody afterwards slides and resources that have been generated. And I know she was also collecting the links as well in the chat to be able to share them with you. Thank you so much. And particularly thanks to Jessie and also to Brittany for this afternoon. It's been lovely working together with you. Thank you so much. Look forward to further collaboration. And to everybody,